Welcome back to the Michael Lofton Show on Reason and Theology. I want to look at Vigano's most recent letter and ask the question, did Vigano just deny Pope Francis is the Pope again? Because this isn't the first time he's done this, and I think it needs to be addressed. It's not long at all. It's literally only a few paragraphs. I'd like to take a look at a few of the charges that he makes against Pope Francis and then his sentence where it is explicit that he denies that Pope Francis is the Pope. So yet another has become a set of a contest. Although again, this isn't new for Vigano. I've already shown elsewhere that he's denied Pope Francis is the Pope in a video called "Did Vigano Just Deny Francis is the Pope?" I highly encourage that you check it out. Go and watch it. So this isn't a single statement, although a single statement like this is sufficient to realize that he denies the Pope. But there are multiple statements. So I want to take a look at that because I think that this is unfortunate. Yet another is denying Pope Francis is the Pope. And I have to continue to reiterate the point. Why is it that many of us have over and over and over continued to back the wrong horse? Over and over and over, the people that we've backed as so-called traditional Catholics, which I would call pseudo-traditionalism because it's not traditional, they just keep falling like flies left and right, becoming set of a contest. Now, they may not use the term set of a contest for themselves, but that is the definition of the term set of a contest. Set of a contest means the seat is empty. If Pope Francis isn't the Pope, who is? I don't know any other claimants to the throne that could be taken seriously, so clearly this would be set of a contism. Perhaps Vigano can come out and clarify his position. Is he a set of a contest, or does he just think that Pope Francis is an anti-pope and there is somebody else who's a true claimant to the papal throne? I don't expect any kind of clarification on his part because he hasn't clarified anything else that he has said. And even, again, the last time that he denied Pope Francis is the Pope, he didn't come out and clarify and say, oh, no, I believe Pope Francis is the Pope. No, he didn't do that. So I don't expect him to do that this time. But unfortunately, there are people who are still following him that I think need to be confronted with the reality of how extreme he has gone. And, I've heard some people say stuff like, well, Vigano's original letter was great, but since then he's kind of gone off track. No. I think what you're seeing is what was there all along. And I would tell you, question even the original letter. Question everything he says. If he says that the sun is out, double check about 5 times to make sure that the sun is out. Question everything. Take nothing that he says for granted. Question every bit of it. Because he's proven himself to be an unreliable resource in so many ways. As I've shown here on the channel many times. So I would even go back and question that original letter and what was said there with that. So let's take a look at this new letter and see what's going on with it. Should be able to see it on your screen now. Let me actually zoom in a little bit more so you can see it better. Like I said, it's not long at all. Just came out a couple days or so ago. All right, so he says the sensitivity that Bergoglio, notice that he calls him Bergoglio, not Pope Francis. Bergoglio shows towards idols and false religions is second only to the contempt he has for the true God in the one church. What a slanderous thing to say about Pope Francis. I used to be exactly like Vigano. Way before Vigano ever radicalized, I was like him. I thought all these things. Later on, he's going to say that Bergoglio is the basically the prophet of the Antichrist. I used to say the exact same thing when I was in my radical or pseudo-traditional days and had my head twisted around and was very confused and bought into a lot of the misinformation that was out there. I remember when I used to think these things, and it's unfortunate. And I would say, as a person who used to believe this stuff, if you really find yourself saying, I agree with Vigano, I want to say, wait, take a step back. And I think you need to retrace your steps and really, really work through the claims that you've bought into about Pope Francis. I have an entire playlist dedicated to that called Recovering from Radical Traditionalism. Watch it. because I think you're going to find out you've been sold a bill of goods in so many things. That's not to say that there's nothing to criticize about Pope Francis. That's not to say that he's been the best Pope ever. That's not to say he hasn't made any mistakes, but it is to say a lot of the stuff out there that you'll hear about him and that you're going to see brought up by Vigano here. A lot of it is misinformation. It's twisting things. And, again, if somebody were to do this to Vigano and twist him in this kind of distorted way, I'm sure he wouldn't like that. So it's jarring to see somebody with this kind of contempt for Pope Francis, to speak of the successor of St. Peter in such a way. But he continues, on the one hand, he receives notoriously blasphemous artists in the Sistine Chapel. Let me just stop there, because he's talking about what he's going to say here in the next paragraph. A crucifix dipped in urine is worth a papal audience full of smiles and a thumbs up. These guys don't stop with their slander. What is wrong with them? What is wrong with them? If you just simply look into the issue with the artist, which we'll look at here in just a second, you'll see this is slander. What is wrong with them? Non-stop, every single day, every story is twisted in every single way to slander Pope Francis, and it's incredible. What kind of heart conspires against the Pope to slander him in such a vicious way every single day? I was shocked that this was yet another instance where he's being tarred and feathered. We'll look at it here in just a second. But he says, and supports the LGBTQ plus sect, which is absurd because Pope Francis explicitly says homosexuality is a sin. That's not supporting the LGBTQ plus sect. That's absolutely contradicting them. So that's not support. That's completely in opposition to the sin. What it is he doesn't crucify every sinner. That's what it is. He treats people with respect and dignity, and he wants people to know who are struggling with sin that they're made in God's image and likeness, and that God loves them, and he loves them to the point that he actually died for them, and he wants them to turn away from their sins. That's the message that Pope Francis is backing up, but make no mistake about it. He's very clear. It is a sin. He says that over and over. How much more explicit does he has to be? Again, might we question some of the ways in which he goes about ministering to people who are struggling with sin? Yeah, but you can't accuse him of supporting the sect itself. This is just vicious, vile slander. And supports the LGBTQ sect, which publicly vilifies our Lord and the Blessed Virgin. And by the way, look, if you really believe this about the Pope, you really have a Pope who is just out to destroy the faith, it's only a matter of time before you leave the Catholic Church. Well, I think you may have already left it in your heart, but it's already a matter of time that you formalize leaving the Catholic Church and become Eastern Orthodox, because Eastern Orthodox have been saying this all along. And they're over there saying, hey, guys, we've been telling you this all along for 1,000 years now. The Pope's a heretic. We've been telling you this forever. Come to Orthodoxy. Come home to Orthodoxy. They're going to be calling you. The Protestants are going to be calling you. And really, at the end of the day, why are you still Catholic at that point? At least by name, why are you still Catholic? If you really believe this. On the other hand, he expresses indignation over a Quran burned by those who are exacerbated by the Mohammedan invasion imposed by the New World Order he promoted. And this is in reference to a comment that you could see here in an interview by Pope Francis, where he says, I feel indignant and disgusted by these actions, Pope Francis expressed to Hamad Al-Kabi, editor of the UAE's daily Al-Ittihad. Al-Ittihad, regarding the burning of pages of the Quran in Sweden. Any book considered sacred by its people must be respected out of respect for its believers. So he's not saying out of respect for the content itself, out of respect for the Quran itself, but out of respect for people. And freedom of expression must never be used as an excuse to despise others, and to allow this must be rejected and condemned. And likewise, you as a Christian, you would want the exact same thing done for you. You wouldn't want Muslims burning Bibles, even though sometimes you have that, but you wouldn't want that. And you wouldn't want the Pope to praise that. And you wouldn't want any of their leaders to praise that either. So that's all he's saying. He's saying out of respect for people, he's indignant about this. You might disagree with him. Okay, that's fine. But Vigano is trying to make it out to be like somehow that he's just really supportive of Islam and the Quran itself. And that's just silly. Again, they just come up with anything they'll throw out at him, everything but the kitchen sink. Whatever they can get to stick, and just throw whatever out and hope something sticks. So he says a crucifix dipped in urine is worth a papal audience full of smiles and a thumbs up. Now, this is from other YouTubers who have been saying, the Pope Francis is basically approving of what's called piss Christ. That is what's the art of work is called. Very blasphemous name, if you ask me. But that's the term that is being used, and it's a image that this artist has of a crucifix dipped in urine. It's just like, what in the world are you thinking? This is certainly outrageous, and I share with everybody who decries against that. But he makes it seem that like Pope Francis is somehow in support of that work. That he's somehow in favor of it and is giving a smiles and thumbs up to it. And again, this is the kind of slander that you'll see online by some pseudo-traditionalists. And Vigano is repeating it here. Whereas in reality, this so-called artist was invited to the Vatican for the sake of dialogue, not for the sake of approving of him. Pope Francis never approved of any work of art or all works of art of this individual. Rather, he was invited for the sake of dialogue. And wanting to dialogue with somebody is not a bad thing. Is this the best way to go about doing it in a papal audience? I don't know. Maybe you think it's not a good idea. Okay. All right. But don't try to act like this is somehow giving smiles and thumbs up to a blasphemous work of art, so-called. That's nowhere in reality. Pope Francis hasn't actually done that. That wasn't the purpose of inviting him over. But again, what they will do is they will just take anything that they can to twist and throw out against Pope Francis, hope something sticks. It's slanderous. And I hope people see what is behind this, the spirit that is behind all this slander going on. Look at this article here. This is from Catholic Culture. Andreas Serrano, the man responsible for the shocking, quote, piss Christ, end quote, attended a June 23rd papal audience with artists, about 200 of them, and met personally with Pope Francis. After the event, Serrano said that by including him among the invited guests, the Vatican conveyed the message that the church understands I'm a Christian artist and I'm not a blasphemous artist. Well, the church nowhere said that. Here's what the church is actually saying while he was invited. The piss Christ is a photo of a crucifix submerged in a container of urine. Bishop Paul Tai, a former secretary of the Pontifical Council of Culture, said that the Vatican deliberately included controversial artists, by the way, including the one who recently made the Padre Pio movie, among those invited to the papal audience. The message, he says, was, we're ready for a conversation, not, oh, we approve of everything you've ever done. That's never been the message. Pope Francis never communicated that. The message is, we want a conversation. We want a dialogue. And I don't think there's anything wrong with dialoguing and conversating with people, hopefully calling them back to a Christian standard. But that's the intention. Again, you might question the way in which it's brought about. Fine, whatever. But don't make it what it isn't. And that is what Vigano is indicating here. Oh, a crucifix dipped in urine is worth a papal audience full of smiles and a thumbs up. I could twist so many things from Vigano's life. If I just wanted to come on here and slander him, I could twist all kinds of stuff just like this and make him out to be the most vile human being if I wanted to. I could do the exact same thing. Oddly enough, I don't actually have to do a whole lot. His vitriol is kind of speaking for itself. So, all right. So the Pachamama thrown into the Tiber arouses deploration. Now, why is this lie still being brought up? Why hasn't this been buried already? Why continue to repeat this lie about Pachamama over and over and over and over and over? The image wasn't actually Pachamama. That's established. There was no idolatry there either. That's established. It was a group of Christians praying, Catholics, in fact. That's established. If you want to understand the service, the ceremony, take a look at this video I did called The Pachamama Ceremony at the Vatican Explained with Father Deacon Dragani. We walk through it play by play. We show the video play by play and explain it and show there's no idolatry. And it wasn't even Pachamama. The inventor and the people at the place understood it to be Our Lady of the Amazon. Now, you might critique that portrayal of the Virgin Mary in that way. Sure, I do that as well. But make no mistake about it, they were venerating the Virgin Mary. And by the way, that wasn't even the only thing they were venerating there. There was all kinds of things in the circle, including Christian martyrs that they were venerating. So why is this lie still being brought up as if this hasn't been put to death already? It's like they just ignore all of the evidence to the contrary. Whereas we actually accounted for all the evidence. We accounted for what Pope Francis said about the Pachamamas thrown into the Tiber. We accounted for that. We accounted for the entire service itself. We accounted for what the Vatican said about the image afterwards. We accounted for literally everything. Whereas they have huge holes in their narrative that they can't account for. And instead of engaging the facts, they just continue to repeat the slander over and over and over. And as I've said, kind of jokingly, although it's true, if you ever want to just get people on your side with whatever you're saying, you know, if you just want them to agree with you about opposing Pope Francis, just throw the Pachamama card down and that's it. I mean, you need no further evidence. They'll use the Pachamama card as if it's a trump card to trump all facts and truth everywhere. You just throw the word down, use the Pachamama card. It proves everything, all facts notwithstanding. I'm gonna have to make a skit about that one day. The Pachamama thrown into the Tiber arouses deploration. One wonders of which church he can be considered pope. Certainly not the Catholic one. Listen to that. So he's not the pope of the Catholic Church. He's the pope of this sect. That's why he says after that, Bergoglio in his sect. So Pope Francis is a pope of a sect, not the Catholic Church. But wait, in reality, if he were the actual pope, he would be the pope of the Catholic Church, not of a sect. That's why it is very explicitly clear. He is saying Pope Francis is not the pope. He's saying he is the head of a sect, but not of the Catholic Church. But a validly elected pope is not the head of a sect. He is the head of the Catholic Church. Even if he has faults, even if he has deficiencies, he's still the valid head of the Catholic Church. So there is no possible way to say this. I've looked for ways of giving him the benefit of the doubt. I don't see it. There's no way to interpret this other than he's not the Pope. And again, in light of the fact that we still have this other video by Vigano. Did Vigano just deny Francis is the Pope that I did about 6 months ago, where it's clear that he's denying Pope Francis is the Pope there as well. But even if we didn't have that video and all we had this, it's very clear from here he does not believe Pope Francis is the Pope, because it is impossible to say what he just said and to say Pope Francis is actually the Pope. One wonders of which church, quote unquote, he can be considered Pope, quote unquote. Certainly not the Catholic one. In other words, Pope Francis is either an anti-pope, and there is another person who is a valid claimant to the throne. Either way, Pope Francis isn't the real pope, if that's the position. Or there is no pope, and Pope Francis is just claiming to be a pope and is an anti-pope in that sense, but the see is vacant. So he either believes the see is vacant, which would be sedevacantism, or he believes it's not vacant, it's occupied by somebody else, to which question I would ask, okay, who is that person? Like, who is the actual pope right now? You can't say it's Benedict. Benedict died, so what do we do now? I think it's pretty clear. He probably doesn't think that there's another rival claimant out there. He probably just thinks that, the see is empty. Either way, he doesn't believe Pope Francis is the Pope, which would put him in schism, automatic excommunication, according to canon law. Which is why I won't be surprised if we ended up seeing Vigano laicized eventually. So Bergoglio in his sect, again, he doesn't believe he's Pope. He believes he's the head of a sect, enslaved to woke ideology, take the errors of Vatican II to their extreme consequences. Wait. So it's not just Pope Francis who isn't the Pope. And it's not just his magisterium that you oppose. It's also the Second Vatican Council. Wow. So he believes Vatican II has errors. Interesting. Okay. So, and we're not talking errors a matter of fact or something like that. He's talking about errors in theology, faith and morals. Okay, so an ecumenical council, in your opinion, taught error in faith and morals, and that council has been bolstered by multiple popes in their magisterium up until the present. And even if you don't include Pope Francis, you still have multiple popes prior to that who have promulgated and reiterated Vatican II. What is the conclusion that will eventually lead him to, if he hasn't already reached it? Well, it's that these other popes weren't popes either. That's the conclusion. Which is just, your traditional Catholicism, if we can use such an oxymoronic term. Okay, so take the errors of Vatican II to their extreme consequences and create the premises with immigration and ecumenism for social unrest. By the way, how did Vatican II define ecumenism? You remember? I know I've done multiple shows on this. Vatican II defined ecumenism as calling non-Catholics back to the Catholic Church. That's how it defined ecumenism, through dialogue, calling them back to the Catholic Church. What's so wrong with that? Nothing. With immigration and ecumenism for the social unrest that the globalist elite, he's using all of the buzzwords to get people on board with them. The globalist elite wants to create so as to legitimize new restrictions on fundamental freedoms. The new order. Gosh, I feel like I'm back in Protestantism. I feel like I'm a Protestant again, having to listen to all the dispensationalists talk about the new world order and the Antichrist and all this and that. The new order prepares the way for the Antichrist. But Bergoglio, in the role of his prophet, that would be the false prophet in the book of Revelation, seems to want to get there even faster. So Vigano believes that Pope Francis is the false prophet of the book of Revelation, who is trying to prepare the way for the Antichrist. Again, we're kind of back to those radical, wild-eyed conspiracy theories that you'll find in Protestant circles. Not hard to imagine, given that what we're seeing here with Vigano is very Protestant in nature anyway. But Bergoglio in the role of his prophet. I remember when I was this confused years ago, and I used to think, well, Pope Francis is ushering in the reign of the Antichrist and is a false prophet. Again, I had my head twisted around because I bought into a lot of the things that were said about Pope Francis and others, without really doing a deep dive into them. And years later, after I did a deep dive, I started to see, well, there's some of the criticisms remain, but actually a lot of the criticisms and a lot of the information out there was not true. They were putting a spin on it oftentimes. So he says Bergoglio in the role of his prophet seems to want to get us there faster. So I hope people can see what's going on here. Vigano no longer believes Pope Francis is the Pope. He's constantly slandering him with everything that he can find, throwing out anything and everything, hoping something will stick. And now even throwing out the accusation that he's the false prophet preparing us for the way of the Antichrist. Look, if you backed Vigano, you backed a wrong horse. I hope you see that by now. And if you can read this and say, yes, I agree with with Vigano, he's right about Pope Francis, you are deceived. And you have been deceived by Satan. Satan deceives people. You have been deceived by Satan. And I'm asking you, I'm begging you for the sake of your own soul, retrace your steps, because this will lead to a very, very dark place. It will certainly lead to you leaving the Catholic Church, but I'm I'm afraid that it will lead to something worse eternally. Retrace your steps. Everything that you've been told by this group, question it. Like I said, I have a whole playlist called Recovering from Radical Traditionalism, dedicated to helping people get through and undo the confused state that they're in. I also have a book called, well, it's actually available on reasonandtheology.com. It's called Church Chaos. It's available for free. It's an ebook. So again, I'm not asking for your money. It's free, and it will help cut through the confusion and put things into perspective as to the confusion that's going on in the Catholic Church today. Again, it's called Church Chaos, reasonandtheology.com. So you have that free resource. You've got the Recovering from Radical Traditionalism playlist here on Reason and Theology, free resource with hundreds of videos where I go through all of the claims, Amors Laetitia, the death penalty, Pachamama, everything that you can think of, the proselytism comments, all of those things. I go through them and I try to assess them fairly. And in some instances, I'll criticize Pope Francis where there still is some room for criticism. But I'll also exonerate him from lies where there have been lies. And I say that as somebody who's not a Pope splainer, who's not a Pope Francis apologist. I don't care in defending Pope Francis per se. I care in defending the truth. I had Father Deacon Dragani, who came on the show a while back and said the exact same thing, and I second that. I care about first and foremost defending the truth, and if Pope Francis is wrong, I don't have a problem acknowledging that. And in some cases I do, because in some cases I think that he has made some bad moves. But there are plenty of instances where, again, he is being lied and slandered about, and I want to clear his name in those areas because all those lies are serving to do is they're confusing people, and then they're leaving the church. They're going to Orthodoxy, they're going to Protestantism, and then they're going to find that there's problems there that are just of the same nature. And then maybe they leave and go to agnosticism or Islam or something else. And I want to help people avoid those problems and come back to reality, come back to the truth. So again, check out those resources, reasonandtheology.com, Church Chaos, free ebook. You just simply put in your email address and it will give it to you right then and there in the form of a PDF, or right here on Reason and Theology. Go to the YouTube, this YouTube channel, go to the playlist section and look for the one that says Recovering from Radical Traditionalism. It'll help work through all of the lies that you have been told. And it'll also help you to analyze the magisterium in the future so that you can properly evaluate it. And so that in that case, you can actually criticize it when it does deserve some criticism within due limits, I should say. But it will also help you to properly evaluate statements in the future so that you don't continue to fall into this mess and this confusion. So as somebody who's already lived through that, who's had to work through that, who's been there, who has heard it all, believe me, I have heard every conspiracy out there. I've looked into the vast majority of them. There's very little that you could tell me about these things in church politics that I haven't looked into already. And as somebody who's already been there and who has been where Vigano has been, I'm telling you, it's the wrong way. It leads to a dark place. It leads to falsehood. It leads outside of the Catholic Church. Turn away from that. All right. Well, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Also check me out, patreon.com/Reason and Theology if you believe in what I'm doing here and you want to support me. God bless. Hey, everybody. Just wanted to tell you about my new free ebook, Church Chaos, Biblical Insights for Confused Catholics. If you are a confused Catholic and you're thinking about leaving the Catholic Church, or you're thinking about converting to the church, but you see that there's a crisis in the church and you're just unsure, this is the book for you. Again, it is free. Just simply go to reasonandtheology.com. You'll see a pop-up that comes up on your screen. Just simply click on it and you'll put in your email and it will provide you the free PDF ebook right then and there. Please check it out if you're confused about the situation in the Catholic Church today. reasonandtheology.com. So Reason and Theology is growing as a channel. As a result, there's been a number of increases in production costs. So if you're benefiting from RNT, I ask that you consider supporting the channel. You can help out by contributing to the Help RNT Grow fundraiser on GoFundMe. You could also consider becoming a member on Patreon at patreon.com/Reason and Theology, or become a channel member right here on YouTube. With either of these options, Patreon or a YouTube member, you'll get extra access to patron-only content. You can also donate directly to RNT at PayPal if you prefer that option. And you can find links to all of these resources and ways to support RNT in the show description. God bless. Hey, thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button and the subscribe button. See you next time. God bless.